The remnants of these ships lie, just beneath the waters here.
You're floating above history. Everything you go over, you want to go down and touch it, just to make sure it's real.
It really is a fascinating tale of about 150 years of great human efforts and heroism.
So it's like this quest for actually finding what actually happened to the ship. I think that's what drives them.
The guys that work with David, I think they have to be full of curiosity. They just want to see what they can find.
The discovery of a shipwreck is really the opportunity to write the final chapter about what happened to the vessel. Each one is unique. Each one tells a story on its own.
You're good over here. You watch your side. You're good over here.
Michigan's waters hold one of the greatest collections of shipwrecks in the entire world.
Good to go.
There are museums under the water.
Hey, I like our new seat. We don't have the ridge there anymore.
Play model a little bit. We're going to put somebody with a camera underwater so you look good while you're doing it.
Dave Trotter has probably found more shipwrecks than anyone else in the Great Lakes.
And this guy is just so hell-bent on, pursuing that.
He just seems to have this drive that has never gone away. And it's like one shipwreck leads to the next one.
Radio buoy just came in off of Thunder Bay, wind out of the 10 knots, and waves at 2.5 feet.
And so happens that shipwreck hunting is something that I've been valued enormously for 35 years.
I think if you had to ask him which was the most important one he'd ever find, he'd probably say the next one.
My dive boat, the Obsession 2, is 32 foot in length. We have heavily modified the vessel for survey work as well as diving activities.
There we go.
For the 1 p.m. conditions at Alpena, it was partly sunny. The temperature was 68 degrees.
For good, effective survey work, given the long hours, it takes at least 4 to 6 crew.
The dew point 58, and the relative humidity was 70%.
And we'll work in shifts. It allows us to go around the clock.
The wind was west at 7 miles an hour.
Want me started?
Searching is both an art and a science.
Well, probably with the speed adjustment and stuff.
And side scan activity is much like a farmer plows a field. We lay out a set of grids and we follow those lines in very precise fashion. This is done with a device called the fish. We will put over the back of the boat. We feed the cable out as much as 600 feet, so the fish is essentially flying through the water. The cable itself contains electrical wiring that transmits the pulses back up to the screen where we're able to interpret what's on the bottom. And of course, shipwreck hunting doesn't mean that you're always successful. As an old saying that we have is a shipwreck will be found when it wants to be found. We spend hours and hours side scanning for shipwrecks. And each of us has our own unique ways of passing the time.
Look at that seagulls coming in at him. He's looking at him.
One of the great enduring mysteries, and it was on my bucket list for many years, was the steamer Keystone State.
Still running around 75 off the bottom, dude. Just great. This is great.
What is all the lattice?
I don't know.
There's those two arches again.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, fellas. This is going to turn out to be a hell of a hit. Hell of a find.
Yeah.
Hell of a find.
See, there's those two arches right there, Rick.
Yeah.
Divers prepare for the very cold water they're about to enter, where the temperature will be 38 degrees on the floor of Lake Huron. They meditate before entering the water, making sure that they are mentally geared to make the dive.
How do you spell relief? First dive.
There's the wreck down there, we hope.
You think there is? Get down and verify it for us there, will you, Rick?
It's a great deal like space travel because gravity is suspended. You're floating. And the environment is not earthly, it's not familiar.
Sometimes we actually call it elevator diving. That portion of the dive can last anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes as you descend into the very darkness of the depths of the Great Lakes.
Out of this blurry atmosphere underwater, here would be a ship lying in front of you. Oh my gosh, I can't even explain to you, that it gives me a chill to even just think about it.
Once the divers have left the surface, I'm really quite alone with my thoughts. Wondering if there's an unforeseen event about being lost, that something's happening down there for which I cannot help them. And if that isn't enough, you also have the concern about entanglement on a shipwreck. It would literally be 500 miles away. There's nothing I can do on the surface to help the diver in trouble below. And only do I feel better when I can count the divers hanging on the line, decompressing.
Hey, you shoot a little video?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah, I would. You find a wreck down there?
There'd be a wreck down there.
There'll be a wreck, but she's a pile.
Yeah,
She is a pile.
She is a pile.
Once you're down there, the magnificent sight of those intact side wheels is just something that is really beautiful and unique. These wheels are massive. They are over 40 feet tall. I can imagine the panic and terror that those crewmen felt when they realized that the ship eventually was going to go down. But really, in that tremendously ice-cold water in the November conditions, it was just a matter of time till they succumbed to hypothermia and died. Because of the 150 years on the bottom, that we find the wooden structure is largely fallen apart or deteriorated, almost like toothpicks.
It's a beautiful wreck, but it's not beautiful. She died a violent death. What a shame.
That's to say for all of the 20 plus people on her died the same way.
Well, exactly right. I mean, those guys went down fighting hard, I'll bet.
There's a great mystery that lies out there on the floor of Lake Huron. What was the Keystone State really carrying? Could there really be Civil War weapons scattered on the bottom? Since discovering the wreck in July of 2013, we've all talked about finding the cargo. And if there's a debris field out there, we want to find it, dive it, and solve yet another Great Lakes mystery.
The Keystone State is a period that I have always been intensely interested in. These huge pre-war wooden sidewheel steamers were one of the most important types of ship that ever sailed the Great Lakes, and yet they've disappeared almost totally without a trace. I usually start with a line drawing, but it's like working almost backwards because I do a line drawing of what you would expect to see.
Oh, okay.
And then through the series and many meetings and many get-togethers with Dave and some of the people that had dived with him.
Did I give you any video footage?
And then we just add or detract or change it to reflect what's actually on the wreck itself. I don't think there's any other type of illustration that's as difficult as doing maritime art, because you have to understand weather conditions. Oils are very forgiving, unlike watercolor. And you also have to know the historic background of where you're placing it. Putting it in the wrong time period, I think I will add that other ship to the background here, is as big a mistake as you can make. I think it's people really adds to the scale. So what I hope to do is illustrate what ships of this time period must have looked like in their proper environment. Each one of these pilot houses had some sort of decoration on the top of it. I think I'm giving life to what would be a black and white dead world. The advantage I have is I can do it in color and I can see it in color. There's this whole series of steamships that existed in what we actually call now the immigrant superhighway that went from Buffalo to Chicago and Milwaukee and West Coast ports. Then, once the ships arrived at the West Coast ports, they were beginning to bring back grain and corn and produce from the farms. So there was this complete need for these ships at this time. And this was before highways, before railroads. The economy on the Great Lakes and in a great deal of the country depended on ships like the Keystone State.
The Keystone State had left Buffalo, traveled down Lake Erie and into Detroit,
and immediately had this cargo loaded on it right away. Why would they have such pressure?
Why would you leave in November, the worst month of the year for storms? You leave without lifeboats, you leave without life jackets, and you head out and you disappear. What was the urgency for making it to Milwaukee with the quote-unquote load of what they said were iron implements?
and this really fascinates us because this was at the beginning of the Civil War.
And the fact that there was a lot of Southern sympathy in Michigan at this time. So there was a possibility to disguise what it was actually carrying. They used the euphemism iron hardware. There's a possibility that it was carrying munitions for the Civil War or some sort of supplies that were being stockpiled on the west coast of Lake Michigan for some of the campaigns down the Mississippi River.
The last time that she was seen, it was off the thumb of Michigan, and considered to be in trouble at that point. But she managed to continue to struggle forward for many, many hours, unbeknown to anybody, and eventually she got over 50 miles from her last sighting when she disappeared in that horrific storm.
Many of the stories that we tell when we tell the tale of a shipwreck, we start with the phrase, "It was to be the last trip of the season," and that was about pushing it just a little bit more.
One of the reasons that the captains applied the Great Lakes and that the shipping companies put people out late in the year with the ships is money.
And they were out there again to do one thing, and that was to drive the economy. And one more trip meant a little bit more money for the owners, for the captains, for the crew. And so oftentimes in late fall, early winter, captains and crews really risk it trying to make the ship a little bit more profitable. And in that, it often cost people their lives.
And days before any sort of weather forecasting and giving the state of communication, a ship heading north into Lake Huron really didn't know what to expect. The only thing they had to work with was the barometer. And it was a standard saying on the Great Lakes that the best way to deal with a falling barometer is to hang your hat over it. In other words, ignore it. Because if they used that as a guide to whether they left port or not, they would never leave port.
In the late 19th century and early 20th century, work was very different. Work was dangerous. Up to 30-foot seas, 40-foot seas have been registered in Lake Huron. And in that, it often cost people their lives.
I read somewhere that in the 1850s, 11 out of every 17 sailors would lose his life at his work. Well, that's an incredible figure, and it had a huge impact on the people who lived around the shores here.
The best way to understand how dangerous the Great Lakes could be is to just realize how many ships are actually sunk. And they believe there's 6,000. It could be as high as 10,000. Now, you don't sink 6,000 ships with 3-foot waves. There had to be tremendous sea conditions and tremendous wind velocity to lose that many ships. The other thing you have to remember too is that there isn't the room to outrun a storm on the Great Lakes like there is, for instance, on the ocean. On the ocean, you may have hundreds of miles where you can ride with the storm. On the Great Lakes, you have maybe 50 miles before you hit one of the coastlines.
This morning we're out in the center of Lake Huron, about 30 miles offshore, making some of the first dives on a new steamer discovery. Actually, it's a steamer we found in 2010, but finally in 2012 we're making the first dives to explore this wreck in well over 200 feet of water. The dive team that's down consists of Marty Lutz. Forget it. The dive team that is down consists of The dive team that is down consists of Bob Martelli. The dive team that's down consists of Bob Martelli, Tim Troop, and Marty Lutz. Marty Lutz is running the cameras for some of the first documentary video that's being shot on this brand new discovery being explored in 2012. When the divers reach a new site for the very first time, they really become detectives looking for clues that will help identify the wreck. Everything from the name on the stern to its cargo to discovering the name engraved on the capstan cover. At this point, just relaxing on the bow of the boat. I have 3 divers below me that are decompressing, just finishing many of them their first dive on this brand new discovery. At most, there's only been 2 dives made by any individual diver, so it's quite a new experience as we continue to uncover Lake Huron's secrets. One of the great payouts for me personally is the fact I'm able to connect people with past events.
It was about 2 years ago. I was late getting home from work. It was cold, it was snowing. And when I walked in the door, my husband said, "We don't have to go out tonight if you don't want to." And I said, "Oh, thank you. I really don't want to." So I did what people do, turned on the news. I'm watching Channel 4 News. And this story came on about a ship that had been discovered in Lake Huron.
For 102 years, the steamer New York has rested on the bottom of Lake Huron. Earlier this year, David Trotter found it.
It was very exciting because we had been searching pretty dedicatedly for her for a couple of years, and she was on what I call my bucket list.
The New York was carrying coal when it sank in a storm in October of 1910. The wooden vessel was built in 1879. It was 283 feet long.
She was a giant for her time, kind of a leviathan of the lakes.
But Trotter, a Ford retiree from Canton, is more impressed with the story behind the sinking. All 14 people aboard the New York scrambled into lifeboats, but were still in danger.
And it so happens a man of character and strength was Captain Reagan on the steamship Mataafa, who was downbound while he was towing another vessel. He had seen the difficulty that the New York was in, and unlike some other ships that perhaps had seen it and kept on going, he made a great decision in that horrific storm to turn around in an attempt to help. And all he could see was 2 small lifeboats on the surface. And after several hours of effort, they managed to hook into the lifeboats, saving everybody.
And when she did sink, a clue as to how it was a rapid sinking was that all the hatch covers, starting from 1, 2, 3, they were all blown off. And places where there were cabins attached to the deck, they're blown off the framework too. So that's done by air trapped inside the hull. So obviously it was a pretty quick sinking once she did begin to go under.
And I said to my husband, I'm not sure, but I think that's the name of the ship on my grandfather's watch. So I went upstairs and found the watch and opened it up, and it really did kind of give me chills to think, oh my gosh, this incident happened over 100 years ago. It made me feel that families don't tell their family stories enough. I felt glad that I had it in my hand. Now I could delve into a story that I was really curious to find out about. Now I'll read what's inside. Presented to Captain Hugh J. Reagan, the Pittsburgh Steamship Company, in recognition of excellent seamanship in rescuing the crew of the steamer New York, October 1st, 1910. Yep, it's ticking.
Grandpa, can you tell us about those ships?
Yes, I can. That is the Edmund Fitzgerald that sank with all hands in 1975 in Lake Superior. And that is the Daniel J. Morrell that broke in two and sank in 1966 in Lake Huron with only one survivor, Dennis Hale. In 1979, Grandpa was involved in finding both halves of that ship on the same day, even though they were 5 miles apart. Now that is a shipwreck story worth telling.
He was just another sailor out on the Great Lakes Sea. Just another sailor, his destiny to meet. Just another sailor, his name was Dennis Hale. Working on the freighter, the Daniel J. Morrell.
It's funny the way life treats you sometimes. If somebody told me that this was going to happen to me, I would have never believed them. A lot of bad memories, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. But I'm here, and that's all that really matters. I climbed aboard the Morrell November 28th, 1966 at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometime later that night, I was awakened by a loud bang. I rolled over onto my right side facing one of the bulkheads, and about the same time, there was another loud bang, and all the books came off my bookcase at that point. As I opened my door, Al Wimmy was coming out of his door, and he said, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I said, "What is it, Al? What's going on?" As I looked towards the stern, I couldn't see the stern. The stern was hogged. I could see lights coming up where the stern would have been, but no stern. She was starting to tear, and it tore real slow like a piece of paper, and you could see sparks coming from it as it tore. And then the two sections separated. Somehow the stern section came abreast of the bow section, and from where I was sitting on the bow section, I could look straight into the cargo hold. It was an oh shit moment. It was just so surreal. Am I really seeing this happen to me? What's going to happen? Is that going to come over us and wipe us all off the raft and kill us? Is it going to ram into us? I had no idea. When it got close enough, I just closed my eyes, held on the steel bar I was sitting on, and just waited for it to come over us. There's nothing I could do. But that's not what happened. I think we were hit by a large wave, and everybody was thrown overboard. By the time I got to the raft, there were two other fellas on it, and they helped boost me aboard, and then another fella came aboard. We helped boost him aboard. We went through the waves all night, and that 65-mile-an-hour wind would hit you at 33 degrees. The first thing you would hear is everybody gasping for air. Me, all I did out there was pray, and I prayed to die. You go through what's called a loss of faith syndrome out there, where you just, you don't care what the end is. You don't care if you live or die, you just want it over with. And all the time I was out there, that was a constant companion that you just don't care. By dawn, I looked at the kid in front of me, John Cleary, and there was like a white foam coming out of his mouth. And I jabbed him. I said, John, I said, are you okay? Are you all right? And he didn't respond to me. So I jabbed him again. I said, John. Called his name out several times. Didn't respond to me. Art Stojic was behind me. I took my elbow and I jabbed him with my elbow. I said, Art, are you okay? He didn't respond either. I jabbed him several times and called his name. No response. Charles Foshbender was behind my legs, and I kicked him. I said, Fuzzy, I said, are you okay? He says, yeah, I'm hanging in there. After a while, I felt Fuzzy moving again, Charlie Foshbender. He says, you know, he says, I can see the beach. He said, there's nothing but forest there. He says, a lot of big rocks in the water, a lot of big boulders. He says, it won't be long until you can feel the bottom of the raft hitting on the beach. And he sounded kind of strange. And I said, are you okay? He says, you know, he says, feels like my lungs are starting to fill up. I said, well, can't you cough that stuff out? Well, he started coughing and he passed away. And he fell with his arm around me. I just wanted an end. I wanted an end to it. And I kept asking myself, you know, why is God punishing me before I die? I looked at John Cleary, and he was encased in ice, and I went a little berserk. And I got up on my elbow and raised my fist to the sky and cussed God, the Holy Family, and told them all to go to hell, and I could make it on my own. And I laid back down and started chipping some of the ice off of John. I guess it was an act of love, envy, compassion, every emotion I had.
It was a cold, windy November afternoon at the Port Huron Times-Herald, and I was 28 years old and a 10-year veteran of the newspaper business by that time. And we got a call that there was a ship missing on Lake Huron and probably sank. We quickly got a crew together and got into the air as quickly as we could. And we flew up past Harbor Beach, looking closely on the shoreline for any remains of wreckage or any evidence. We saw a helicopter hovering on the water.
And I looked up and I saw it, and I waved to them. And I saw them land in the water on the beach.
And so I got the camera ready and we made a pass. So here I am shooting away with my trusty old mechanical Nikon F and a 300 millimeter lens, the lens wide open. And so anyway, we're shooting whatever we could.
And two of the Coast Guardsmen got out of the helicopter and walked over to me, picked me up, and laid me on top of one of the other bodies on my back. And the first thing I said to them is, I love you guys, where the hell you been?
I was really disappointed with the first frame. This next frame was not good. And it was windy, the plane was buffeting, and so we're lucky to get anything. Finally, the good frame showed up, and I was really elated because it captured the moment. Get it in the enlarger quickly and make a print. And anybody that's done darkroom work knows that the reward comes when you finally see a print emerging in the developer. Ah, there comes the image. Yeah, that looks good. And there it is. I shouldn't be gleeful about making photographs of dead men on a raft, but this was an important moment, and here's what it was like. And so I think that's the essence of journalism.
Well, they landed at Harbor Beach, Michigan, on one of the docks there. And then they drove me to Harbor Beach Community Hospital. I was blue when they brought me in. They didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And priest came in and gave me last rites of the church, as well as confession. Well, actually, I had confession 3 times that night. I figured if I was going to go, I wanted my slate clean. It took years before I had all the feeling back in my legs and feet. Since then, I've had like 13 surgeries on my left foot. All I have on my left foot is a big toe. The other toes have been amputated, as well as the outside of my foot.
As we approached the anniversary of this, one of our reporters wrote him a letter and said, hey, this is the anniversary year, and we'd like to come and talk to you about it. He wouldn't talk to anybody about it. He wouldn't talk to newspaper, TV, anybody for 25 years.
I guess you could say I was kind of in hiding. And then he told me that there was a fellow there that wanted to meet me that had a gift for me. Well, a gift, that got my curiosity up. So I gave my address and told him to come on over.
I said, Dennis, I have a copy of the picture that I took. Would that disturb you to see it? Would you like to see it? He said, oh no, I'd like to see it.
He had this box in his hand, and he handed it to me. And I opened it up, and there was this painting in there, the photograph. And I looked at it, and it kind of made my worst dream come true when I saw that.
He sat in a chair staring at that for at least 4 or 5 minutes without saying a word. He just stared at that.
It was me on the raft with a helicopter next to me. And it just kind of, it's like somebody reached into me and just tugged on my heart.
That's all right.
Nah, hold on, let's get her back so we protect it there.
I met Dave Trotter,
Yeah,
it was at least 5 years after the
saying
sinking.
You're right. I don't want to dance.
Well, all I can say is I'm 74 too, and you know, my motivation is to tell my story. And Dave comes across these shipwrecks, and I'm sure that once he finds them, he explores them pretty good.
Good job, Dave.
Good job, Dennis.
Hey, I'll see you guys later, okay?
All right, let's stay in touch. It's good seeing you again, Dennis.
And he finds a story there, and he wants to tell the story as well, because it's knowledge. It's something that's been lost, it's been refound. There's a history there, and there's a story behind it.
Humorous. This wreck did not like me finding her. She was mad as hell at me.
He was just another sailor out on the Great Lakes Sea. Just another sailor, his destiny to meet. Just another sailor, his name was Dennis Hale. Working on the freighter, the Daniel J. Morrell.
When we explore these shipwrecks,
Like a wave out on the storm-tossed sea,
we really see it as an
driven
underwater
by the
cemetery.
gale. But then he came to work and sail on the Daniel J. Morrell.
It's a place to be respectful and reflective.
Last run of the season came was 1966. November storm was blowing hard, snow and rain were mixed. A crashing sound was all they heard, no time to signal help. They climbed aboard the life raft as the ship sank in the dark.
We explore these shipwrecks not only to remember them, but to also help tell their story so that they are always remembered in our Great Lakes.
Just 4 men left from the crew of the Daniel J. Morrell. Night turned into daytime, daytime into night. One by one their voices died from cold and wind and fright. Just one lonely sailor now, prepared to meet his end. But in the night a voice was heard, and this is what it said.
Sailors lost their lives on these vessels.
Go back and tell the story. Go back and tell the tale.
Many remained down there.
The men who lived and worked and died on the Daniel J. Morrell.
Lost to the Great Lakes.
Just another sailor out on the Great Lakes Sea. Just another sailor, his destiny to meet. Just another sailor, his name was Dennis Hale. Sole survivor of the wreck of the Daniel J. Morrell.
We toll the bell in memory of all who lost their lives on Lake Erie. For there is mercy with thee, therefore shalt thou be feared. We toll the bell in memory of all who lost their lives on the St. Mary's River and Lake Huron.
Diving is not a risk-free sport. We are a brotherhood of divers, and in August of 2014 we lost Tim Troop. Tim went up to the Straits of Mackinac, got on another boat to enjoy diving, and ended up getting tangled, and by the time he got out and got to the surface, he had severe health problems that resulted in Tim dying.
Nothing like a Huron bath after a good dive to wake you up. Oh, the boys are going north.
When he got involved with us, the whole team was lifted. The service was very emotional. It was just very unsettling to realize that we were eulogizing someone that just shouldn't be there.
Family was first and foremost in Tim's life. For many in this room, you'll remember Tim and his second great passion, his passion of diving.
I'm going right to the boilers and the engine so the second team with the cameras can come back in when it settles and videotape it.
He loved the Great Lakes shipwreck diving. There was a sense of wonder and awe to be able to go and explore those sites. Tim was a history buff. To go to a museum, Tim would read every plaque along the way. And a shipwreck became that underwater museum to be able to explore and to find life and meaning, to find that which was lost.
And it became very important to us that we not leave any of the gear that Tim had with him on that dive, still leave it with that wreck, that we wanted it to come home.
Well, I expect Tim Truth's looking down saying, well, I appreciate you fellows doing that.
The trip was really a mission for all of us. Going out on the next dive to enjoy it when Tim was not there was literally depressing. So we all felt that he was with us, perhaps spiritually. We went out to one of the new discovery sites and we did something as a tribute to Tim. Tim, I hope you enjoyed the dive that Marty, Rick, and John Marsh made for you. And you got to see the wreck, and we're forever grateful for your time that you had with us.
Here, here.
We miss you. There was 100 or 150 years where we created shipwrecks because of the design, the conditions, the weather, how they maintained the ships. And so that event happened. We don't create shipwrecks today. Which means that each time one is found, we reduce the pool of shipwrecks left to be discovered. And I would say that within the next 20 or 25 years, that there won't be many ships left to be found in the Great Lakes.
On the horizon, who knows, there's still a couple of very interesting historical ships that have not been found that we certainly would love to find and understand what happened to them in their final hours of tragedy.
Yeah, I do love shipwreck hunting, the team effort that's involved in making it happen, and the opportunity to see things that no one has seen before.